Fellas, a few weeks ago I match-made the UFC heavyweight division, and we've just had a massive main event in the middleweight division in a UFC fight night between Paul Craig and Brendan Allen. It was a pretty good fight as well. Brendan Allen absolutely dominated him, and I thought, you know, like, why not match-make the UFC middleweight division? A couple pay-per-view fights, couple fight nights on there as well. And this is just to clean up the division, because there's a lot of people who haven't been matched up yet. There's very few, you know, announced fights besides the title fight, and I'm not going to be including the title fight in this video because, I mean, it's already been announced. There's no point, you know, kind of matchmaking a fight that's already been announced. So we're going to be matchmaking the rest of the division. Let me know your thoughts and if you agree, or if I missed any, I guess, significant fighters out. But we're going in there with the first fight, which is Israel Adesanya versus Khamzat Chimaev. I expect this is probably one of the biggest fights you can get in the UFC that's not for a belt, besides maybe like a McGregor pay-per-view. Yeah, this is a massive fight. Adesanya versus Chimaev, they're both stars. It's going to be Adesanya's biggest grappling test, probably ever in the UFC. I mean, what was his other grappling test? What are we talking about? Marvin Vettori? That was his next big grappling test that he's had. If Marvin Vettori is the toughest grappling threat you've had in your career, I think you need a bigger fight, mate. And that's why I'm putting him against Khamzat Chimaev, who's one of the most dangerous grapplers in the UFC, at least in the first round anyway. And when it gets out the first round, he does kind of slow down, but he's ranked number 8, and I feel like Khamzat and Adesanya, they're both one fight away from a title shot. After Sean beat Adesanya, there was a lot of talk of who's going to fight for the belt next. Some people thought it was Khamzat. Some people thought they'd give Adesanya an immediate rematch. The majority of us thought, you know, Dricus du Plessis deserves an immediate title shot, and that's what he's got. So I feel like this is the perfect number 1 contender fight. Adesanya has stated that he does want to take a break from the sport for a bit, so I expect this fight to be in like March, April time next year. Khamzat Chimaev's also had like a hand injury, so I don't expect him to be back rapidly. And Khamzat is very used to taking time off MMA. I mean, his last fight previous to UFC 294 was in September of 2022 against Kevin Holland, so he's used to taking time off. So Adesanya versus Chimaev, it's a massive fight, and like I said, Adesanya's biggest grappling test he's had in his career. I do really think Khamzat Chimaev would maul him, because we've seen Khamzat Chimaev, and in that first round against Kamaru Usman, he dominated him in grappling, and if he can do that to Kamaru Usman, I've got no kind of doubts in my mind that he'll do the same to Adesanya. But again, if he gets in the later rounds, you've got to give Adesanya the respect. He's a lot better in the later rounds than Chimaev is, and on top of that, Chimaev has never faced a guy with the same striking level as Adesanya. Adesanya's, listen, you can hate him all you want, but he's definitely one of the best strikers in the UFC. Khamzat Chimaev has been caught a lot by people who aren't even S-tier strikers. So if Khamzat Chimaev was to get caught by Adesanya, you know, it's a problem for him. But yeah, this is a perfect number 1 contender fight. If either of them that gets to win on this fight should fight for the belt next. This could be a co-main event. I already made the UFC 300. I think this is the perfect co-main event to a McGregor-Chandler main event, or even just a main event for a pay-per-view that's just a non-title fight. But yeah, stick it on a pay-per-view. Massive fight between two massive stars. Number 1 contender fight around next year, and I feel like this is the perfect fight for both of them. So I'm going to do Adesanya versus Chimaev. Next fight, Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier 2. Now, originally, I matched up on UFC 300. I did Robert Whittaker versus Kamaru Usman, but now that I think of it, I don't think Kamaru Usman needs that fight. First of all, he's just lost to Khamzat Chimaev, who's ranked number 8. If you've just lost to someone ranked number 8, it doesn't really make sense to give you the person ranked number 3 after losing the guys at the rank number 8, if you know what I mean. Second of all, it's a bit of a random matchup between Kamaru Usman and Robert Whittaker, so I thought, let's do Cannonier versus Whittaker 2. Cannonier's been on a bit of a streak, you know, he beat Sean Strickland. It was a very, very close decision, a bit questionable. Then he went out there and absolutely dominated Marvin Vettori earlier this year, and it was domination. It was one of Cannonier's best performances in a while. They've both lost to Adesanya not long ago. Robert Whittaker needs a win, though, because his last win was a Marvin Vettori decision in Paris, and then he's just been finished by Dricus du Plessis, and I feel like this is the perfect time we rematch them, because Jared Cannonier, I feel like he's one fight away or one win away from a title shot. Whittaker, he needs to bounce back. Why not give him someone who's just coming off a fresh, dominant win over Marvin Vettori, but he's also a guy that you've already beaten before, so it's not like we're instantly putting you in the deep end. So I feel like this is the perfect rematch, fight night main event. If not, stick it on a pay-per-view. I think I've said that for a lot of fights already, but yeah, this is the perfect fight to make. Whittaker versus Cannonier. I want to see this fight. I want to see the rematch. And I feel like now that Cannonier's had a very dominant performance over Marvin Vettori, maybe it's EPOs, who knows, but he did have a very out-of-nowhere dominant performance on against Marvin Vettori. Maybe now we'll see Cannonier go out there and beat Whittaker. Maybe Whittaker's the new guy to beat to get a title shot, but I feel like this is the perfect fight to make. Yeah, pretty much another number one contender matchup in the UFC middleweight division. I mean, we've got Adesanya and Chimaev. We can also have this. If Cannonier can beat Whittaker, then he can be in line for the title shot. It's kind of like the welterweight division. You've got Bilal Muhammad, who's first in line, and then in terms of the middleweight division, that'll be the winner of Adesanya and Chimaev. And then you've got Shavkat, who's got up and coming as well. That would be Cannonier if he was to beat Whittaker. So it's kind of, you know, there's a couple of people in line, but I feel like this is the perfect rematch to make. Perfect time to happen as well. Their last fought, I think it was 2020, so we need an updated version in 2024. Let's do Cannonier versus Whittaker 2 Fight Night main event. I think it's the perfect opportunity. So yeah, I want to see that fight. Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen, he says he's ranked number 10, but the ranks haven't updated. So I feel like come this week, he's going to be ranked much higher. Maybe he's going to be ranked 6, 7 around that spot. But Brendan Allen just had a dominant win over Marvin Vettori. I think he's got the most rear naked choke finishes in the UFC. I mean, you can look at his record on screen. All 3 of his most recent wins all come by a rear naked choke. Marvin Vettori is a very inconsistent fighter. He'll win against kind of mid-level opponents, but when it gets to proper high-level opponents, he tends to lose. You can see he lost to Whittaker by decision. He's also lost to Adesanya twice. Got battered by Jared Cannonier early this year, but he did pick up a win against Roman Delid early this year as well. So this is the perfect fight to make. Brendan Allen needs a big opponent, and Marvin Vettori, I guess he's that guy. He's the biggest opponent that Brendan Allen would have had. And I know Brendan Allen, you know, is this massive prospect, but his best win so far is Paul Craig. And although Paul Craig isn't terrible, when you look at Paul Craig and it doesn't scream title shot, it doesn't scream number one contender matchup. So I do still feel like Brendan Allen has to prove himself against a proper middleweight. I mean, Paul Craig has 1 win at middleweight against Andre Muniz. So I feel like Marvin Vettori, if Brendan Allen can get past Marvin Vettori, that opens up a whole lot of new matchups, maybe against people like Cannonier, Whittaker, you know, the top 5 spot. But Vettori, again, if he can go out there and beat a massive prospect who's on a bit of a hype train right now in Brendan Allen, then that's obviously going to open up more matches for Vettori. Probably just going to be rematches because Vettori has fought so many people in the middleweight division already, it's crazy. So I feel like if Vettori was to beat Brendan Allen, it would just be a bunch of rematches. But I think, again, another Fight Night main event, massive Fight Night main event in the Apex. Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. Grappler versus, I guess, I'd say Vettori's a bit balanced. I'd say he's more of a striker, if anything. But, yeah, big test for Brendan Allen, though. Big test. Some people want to see Brendan Allen versus Khamzat. As good as that fight would be, I feel like Khamzat Chimaev needs the big fight against Adesanya, like I said before. I really do want to see Brendan Allen test himself against a ranked contender like Vettori. So I'm putting this fight together. Allen versus Vettori Fight Night main event. Next matchup, Paulo Costa versus the winner of Roman Delid and Nasruddin Imavov. Obviously, Delid and Imavov has been matched up against each other. Paulo Costa hasn't fought since August of 2022. He hasn't fought in ages. He was supposed to fight on UFC 294, then he had to pull out due to, I think it was an elbow injury or something that he got. I don't exactly know what happened, but yeah, I think this is a good fight to make. We've got Roman Delid on one hand, who is a dangerous fighter, by the way. He's a very dangerous fighter. He got 2 knockouts, one against Jack Hermansson, and then obviously he lost against Marvin Vettori in what was a kind of close matchup at UFC London. It wasn't the most interesting matchup. And they've got Imavov, who obviously got the win over Buckley, lost to Strickland, and lost at, well, kind of no contest to Chris Curtis. I don't really care who wins, but I feel like the winner needs to be matched up against Costa. Costa's last win was Luke Rockhold, who's not even in the UFC anymore. Luke Rockhold's last win was ages ago, so that's not really a good win. Before that, he lost to Marvin Vettori. Before that, it was an Adesanya loss. So Paulo Costa's last legitimate win it's been years. So Paulo Costa, he doesn't deserve a big matchup against a Khamzat or a Brendan Allen or even a rematch against Vettori. I think he needs to fight one of these, I guess, up-and-comers against, well, maybe not up-and-comers, but another contender like Imavov or like Roman Delid. He's calling for these big fights. He doesn't deserve any of these big fights. All he does is sit on Twitter. If he can go past and get past a guy like Delid, fair enough. He needs another fight. But if he can't beat a Delid or Imavov, then that's done for him. But he needs to prove himself, get this on a pay-per-view, maybe a main or co-main event for a fight night. But yeah, Paulo Costa needs to prove himself. He's already lost to Marvin Vettori. He can't be fighting anyone ranked higher than Vettori. The Luke Rockhold win was over a year ago, and it's not even a good win. He kind of struggled in that matchup as well. So Paulo Costa versus the winner of Delid and Imavov, in my opinion, I think makes the most sense. And then obviously, if let's say Delid wins, if he can get past Costa, then that's going to open up a whole lot of new matchups for him. Maybe he can have the Cannonier fight that was originally scheduled. And if Costa can beat Imavov, again, maybe he can get back in the title picture. Final matchup, the guy who lost to Brendan Allen. Paul Craig versus Michel Pereira. I really want to see this matchup in like a UFC London. Now, it is a bit of a random matchup. Pereira's on a bit of a winning streak. I forgot when his last loss was, but he's on like a 5-6 fight winning streak. Paul Craig has just been finished by Brendan Allen by a submission. It's a somewhat winnable fight for Paul Craig because, yes, Michel Pereira's on a hot streak, but you've also got to remember, Michel Pereira is one of the weirdest fighters in the UFC. I can just see Pereira doing like a backflip into like a heel hook, or I don't know, just a submission that put on Paul Craig's end. I can see Paul Craig finding some random submission because that's Paul Craig's whole thing. He's got the surprise factor. Overall, a complete fighter. He's not very good, is Paul Craig. It is a step down from Brendan Allen. But yeah, Michel Pereira, he's no way he's making welterweight anymore. I mean, he already screwed off the Wonderboy fight because of that. There's no way he's making welterweight. Let's see this fight on like a UFC London card. Paul Craig retirement. I think they're going to do a UFC pay-per-view in London next year. So I think I'll stick Paul Craig on there for a retirement fight. Not an easy fight, but again, it is a winnable fight for Paul Craig. And in terms of Michel Pereira, I mean, he's just got a first-round knockout over Andre Petroski. But you got to realise, before the Petroski fight, he hadn't fought since May of 2022, which is a long time. I mean, we're talking about Costa not fighting since August. But Michel Pereira's last win before his previous one was in May. So, listen, it's his first comeback fight for Pereira. Let's get him another match against Paul Craig in London, in the UK. Could be an exciting fight, who knows? Retirement fight for Paul Craig. And yeah, let's get that done. Exciting fighter as well. It's not like we're putting Paul Craig against a boring fighter. And yeah, that's me matchmaking the UFC middleweight division. Let me know your thoughts on these matchups. Do you think they're going to happen? Did I miss any fighters out? But yeah, originally, thank you for watching.